Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to offer dana, then please do go to justthiszen.org/giving. Your support really does make a huge difference. Thank you so much.
Tonight I wanted to explore something that in many ways I'm struggling to language, but I'd really like to kind of have a go um, because it seems to me fairly central to our practice, and yet it's one that I think for us um, in many ways in our culture, we're time-bound creatures. And I think it's really kind of hard, it's certainly been hard for me to kind of get my head round to really soften and get curious about um, our existence in time. Um, so someone quoted, in my great raft of quotes, I sometimes lose who said it, but someone said, "You're not a brief arrangement of atoms experiencing the universe. You are the universe briefly arranged into a form that can experience itself." And one of the central ways we can experience ourselves is time. Um, and we have so many ideas about time, and many of them are kind of judgmental or pejorative, or you know, like time as a harsh taskmaster. We've got being on time, just in time, we've been timed out, we're out of time, we've run out of time, we're wasting time. Time's flying and it's the right time or the wrong time, or, time dragging. It's this extraordinary relationship we have in which the particularity of how we experience time is so fluid, and it's a kind of universality as well. We're all experiencing, time, and for sure, poets and writers have been wrestling with this: what is time, and how are we living in it, and exploring it in so many ways. And I came across a poem by a poet I really like called Tom Hirons, and it's called "In the Meantime." Meantime. Meanwhile, flowers still bloom, the moon rises and the sun. Babies smile, and somewhere, against all the odds, two people are falling in love. Strangers share cigarettes and jokes. Light plays on the surface of water. Grace occurs on unlikely streets, and we hold each other fast. Against entropy, the fires and the flood, life leans toward living. And while death claims all things at the end, there were such precious times between, in which everything was radiant, and we loved again this world. So here we are, in these precious times. And in kind of reading and exploring this idea about time, I was reading that while we have 8 ways of sensing the world and ourselves in the world, the traditional 5 of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, and 3 internal senses, which allow us to know how we're actually moving in the world: vestibular sense, proprioception, and interoception. They're kind of all the messages we're getting from ourselves inside of us, telling us how we are, about balance and bodily awareness, and our own bodily states. But given it's universal, it's also absolutely extraordinary to me that we have no sense organs or any aspect of our nervous system that actually apprehends time. We have nothing in us that is built to understand, detect, or measure time. I think that's really extraordinary. But we learn, especially in our clock-driven Western cultures, from the moment of birth. I used to be an antenatal teacher, and it was all about, feeding on the clock and how many minutes of sleep have you got? How long has the baby been napping? And, because parents are already on the clock, we're encultured into time from the moment we're born. And it also used to really amuse me when I was an antenatal teacher, because pregnant people would talk about being early or late for their due date. And in reality, the due date is a guesstimation. And only about 4 to 5% of all births happen on the due date. And yet, that's the marker we give for something being early or late. And so most of us are going to be early, and most of us are going to be late. And I just think that's such a kind of point in our culture that we're already born early or we're born late, or the very few are actually born on time. But there are whole cultures that have no words for time. And historically, before we had these smaller and smaller divisions of time, now we have milliseconds and minutes and hours, things were just known by much larger planetary movements, or by, what was happening at the time that might be memorable. And in a lot of cultures, they name the moon after the seasons, so the wolf moon or the blue moon or the spring moon, because that was the much larger overarching perspective about time. I read an article in The Guardian by Jo Marchant, and she says, time is less a universal truth than a feature of how we interact with the world. And this insight is reflected in the way that some indigenous communities experience time. The Aymara people of Chile, for example, don't see the future as laid out in front of them, like we might, but hidden behind them, unseeable and unknowable. The Yamandawa of the Amazon have no clocks at all and no word for time. And they wouldn't need one if they went by their bodily senses, because we have no way of perceiving time, except we're encultured into time. And as someone who spent many, many years living on the hour and on the hour and a half, I have an incredibly strong internal clock. And I can usually tell, I have a little ping inside me that goes at around about an hour, often goes around about an hour and a half. And I can even wake up in the night and tell you the time, usually within about 5 minutes before I look at the clock. I wake up quite a lot in the night. I still have a sense of time. And I'm like, how? How am I doing that? How are any of us doing that? So Jo Marchant says, what we're left with when we release ourselves from the cosmic clock is lived time, which is our own personal, much, much more malleable experience of change. Because that's what time is. Time is really living in change. And we can explore this difference between lived time and the idea of kind of linear time. And linear time is often named chronological time. And it's after Kronos, the god of time. And although there's some confusion in the kind of mythology of it, Kronos is often depicted as the god of time. And the way he's the god of time is he saw all things consumed and worn down by time's passage. So he's either watching and noticing the wearing away of things, that time is about destruction, Or he sometimes gets confused with a vengeful God who was so determined that he wasn't going to be overthrown by his own children that he swallowed them whole. and and I was thinking either of those work for many of us. Either we feel worn down by time, and sometimes we feel swallowed by time, swallowed whole. And in our incredibly scheduled worlds now, there's something called time famine. And psychologists have identified the rise of time famine, where the more efficient and productive we try to be, the more precisely we measure time, and the more we try to pack into our busy schedules, the less time we actually feel ourselves to have. We start feeling time as tighter and tighter. And this has a huge impact on our quality of life. And studies show that people experiencing time famine are less likely to do things they enjoy, to eat healthily, to seek medical attention when they need it, or even to help each other. We can become so stuck chasing seconds in a kind of vicious cycle of ever diminishing and tighter time. And a recent study on children and the development of anxiety in children and adolescents showed that one of the biggest predictors of anxiety, the development of anxiety in children, is how much they're hurried. If you live in a hurry-up household, you're much more likely to develop anxiety. And I think that kind of shows how that time hunger, just contaminates experience all the time. Some of you may remember this, some of you definitely won't. When I was growing up, there was a program called Tomorrow's World. And it was presenting always the kind of developments, the most groovy, exciting developments in technology. Fancier washing machines, faster travel, more efficient vacuum cleaners, all sorts of things. And they were always displayed alongside people in kind of leisure suits, relaxing while these machines took over more and more of our work. No. It hasn't happened. We don't have more time. Many of us feel like we have less time than we ever did. Continuing from the article in The Guardian, she says, we tend to imagine time as incessant and non-negotiable, ticking by somewhere out there in the world, impossible to slow or stop. Yet emerging scientific pictures is that clock time isn't a standalone physical phenomenon at all. It's merely a mathematical tool or a bookkeeping device, useful for coordinating our interactions. Doesn't always work when I'm trying to connect with America, but but with no independent existence of its own. And I was thinking about, how we feel about time, and often in a Hakomi weekend or something, we'd say, you've got 10 glorious minutes left. And people would just relax instead of feeling like, got 10 minutes. It was something about, these are lovely, spacious 10 minutes. And they often felt pretty spacious. And that for me really points to this kind of the fluidity and the elusiveness of time. When we think genuinely, we have no sensory organs for detecting it, or any dedicated parts of our brain or nervous system for tracking it. We can really, and all of us, I cannot believe there isn't anybody here who hasn't had this experience that, time can vary hugely, you can have that experience of minutes dragging by. You can look at your clock and it is like, 8:40, so I'd look 7:45. I've been meditating for hours. 7:48. It's kind of like it can takes so long, and then you can be doing something and be like, well, where did the morning go? You know, where did the afternoon go? Where did that time go? So hours can race if we're excited and having fun, you know, we can easily kind of be fooled about how much time has elapsed, too little or too much. Just recently, I saw a picture of my twin grandsons just after they were born, so they were months old. And I was talking with my daughter as we were walking through town, and they're 5, and they're, you know, just hugely independent little beings rushing about. And we were talking about the old saw that, you know, that the days feel like years and the years fly by. And it felt absolutely true. And we were thinking, you know, 5 more years are going to be pre-teens. You know, they're going to be getting ready to go to secondary school in a time we can't even imagine. And yet this 5 years has both taken a long time and flown by, as I'm sure will be true for everybody here. And even cosmologists measuring the universe don't find there's no moving river of time. You know, there's no physical flow of events beyond our perception. You know, no moment at which the future is slipping into the past. Which is very interesting when we think about our practice and, you know, being present to the moment. Well, what's that mean? What's that actually mean? And then I read about this experiment from quantum physics. And so there's this very famous, I can only read what someone's written about it. I don't know it. The famous double slit experiment that shows a physicist's choice of how they choose to measure a photon influences what they observe. So whether it travels through one slit like a particle or through both like a wave. So particle and wave happening at exactly the same time. But there's an even lesser known variant of this experiment in which the physicist doesn't decide what measurement they'll make until the last possible moment. And amazingly, in this case, their choice at the point of measurement apparently influences not just whether it's wave or particle, but the journey it's already made. So the choice is impacting the past. Like, this is all fascinating stuff. The novelist William Faulkner wrote, "The past is never dead. It's not even past." So there's something about this, like what is contained in this moment in which we're sitting? What are we actually experiencing when we sit and allow ourselves to be fully present? And Dogen Zenji was really also fascinated by this deep fluidity of time, and that when we're awake to ourselves, we don't experience ourselves as separate from time. We don't experience ourselves as outside of time or subject to time. In Uji, the time being that he wrote, he says, an ancient Buddha said, for the time being, stand on top of the highest peak. For the time being, proceed along the bottom of the deepest ocean. For the time being 3 heads and 8 arms. For the time being an 8 or 16-foot body. For the time being a staff or a whisk. For the time being a pillar or a lantern. For the time being the sons of Zhang or Li. For the time being the earth and sky. For him, for the time being here means time itself is being, and all being is time. Our own being is an expression of time. He says, the way the self arrays itself is the form of the entire world. We aren't, that quote at the beginning, were the universe here arranged in this particular form to experience itself. See each thing in this entire world as a moment of time. Time being. Things do not hinder one another, just as moments do not hinder one another. The way-seeking mind arises in this moment. A way-seeking moment arises in this mind. They're not separate. Each moment is arising in time, in us, as an expression of time. He says it's the same with practice and with attaining the way. Thus the self setting itself out in array sees itself. This is the understanding that the self is time. I don't know how you're doing with this, but it fascinates me. He says, do not think that time merely flies away. Do not see flying away as the only function of time. If time merely flies away, you would be separated from time. The reason you do not clearly understand time being is that you think of time only as passing. In essence, all things in the entire world are linked with one another as moments, because all moments are the time being. They are your time being. And I think we're so very practiced in believing in time as this external thing, you know, we're seeing it almost like this river that's got this linear flow. But if you let yourself for a moment just imagine that you actually have no sense organs that are perceiving time, no way of actually understanding time other than yourself as an expression of time. It's kind of wonderfully mind-boggling. I talked earlier about Kronos, the god of time, you know, the eater of children, who marks time by the dissolution and destruction of all things. You know, it's kind of like, Kronos is like impermanence on steroids. But there's a kind of different perspective, and it's called Kairos. So in Kronos, what we live by, each moment is marked and our life lives in bites and the clock ticks and it's forever going forward, linear time, and time is receding behind us. But there's also an idea called Kairos, which is spelled with a K, not a C. And that means like feeling of being in the right moment. Kairos is just being in the moment. It's an emergent property of being, and it's not timed or constructed. It's a feeling, not a thing. And I've said this before, but it's kind of, I was thinking about it again in relation to thinking about time. At one point in Switzerland, Flint said to me, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas across space and time are waiting for you. And in that moment, I knew it to be true. But it wasn't like waiting, like they were sat on the platform for train Trudy to pull up. You know, it was like they are just continuously present. They are continuously present, as I am continuously present. And time kind of collapsed. And everything that was there, past, present, my past, other people's past, present, my future, all future, was just completely present. When Dogen Zenji talks about being time, he's saying we are an expression of the universe. We are time. We don't live outside of time, and time is not a separate, distinct, linear expression. So Joe Marchant says, live time is different from clock time because it isn't defined by a numerical counter that chops things into seconds or milliseconds or microseconds. Each moment is more like a tapestry, woven from changes wreaked on multiple timescales. When you hear music, the notes make sense only as part of a longer phrase or piece. You know, when you taste a favourite dish or recognise the loved one, it takes not just one instant, but that entire lifetime of sensations and experiences. It's a creative process that's vital not just for our sense of time, but of who we are. If you're sitting in a cafe sipping your coffee, anticipating a friend's arrival, while picturing a memory you both share, you're drawing past, present, future into one single moment of now, made up of all of those things. This present moment isn't without history. This present moment can only exist because of everything that's gone before it. And the verse on the Hirons says, don't waste this precious life. It doesn't say don't waste time. You know, this life is us in time. Thich Nhat Hanh said, each moment is a chance for us to make peace with the world, to make peace possible for the world, to make happiness possible for the world. Each moment. Like the walking monks, you know, if we're practicing peace, we're practicing peace for and in the whole world. Katagiri Roshi said that thinking about time is of no help. Clearly, I've been having fun then, but no help, because it always creates a gap. Yeah, we're thinking about time. He says that it's very hard to put these things into words, but through experience, we can understand them. You have to feel into lived time to know that we're an expression of time, and that this moment contains all of time. T.S. Eliot, as always, puts it so beautifully. People have been wrestling and wrangling with this for so long. In Burnt Norton, he says, time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future, and time future contained in time past. If all time is eternally present, all time is unredeemable. What might have been an abstraction remaining a perpetual possibility only in a world of speculation. What might have been and what has been point to one end, which is always present. Time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future. Pretty much what Dogen Zenji was saying. So maybe that's enough for now. I'm really curious about how that's kind of landed for people, and what it stirs, or what you imagine or think about, or so I'd love to meet with people for inquiry, which, you know, just you can put your hand up if you know how to use the reactions on the reaction button, or you could we're small enough that you could wave a hand if you need to. But if anyone's got anything they'd be interested in.